The volatility has left analysts flummoxed as well. Deutsche Bank's Jim Reed wrote there was no obvious explanation for the timing or the magnitude of the slump. It ceased to be a free market a long time ago, so analyzing it is tough. That leaves analysts to look at the warning lights on the Chinese economy's black box. First, slowing growth. That may be worse than it appears if Beijing is manipulating the figures, as some suspect. China's growth was fueled in part by debt. With growth slowing, there's concern that debt could turn toxic. And finally, the extreme measures the government has taken to prop up the market. That shows officials are worried, and there could be more weakness under the surface. Joining me now is Jamie Metzley, Senior Fellow at the Atlantic Council. So, Jamie, is this just the sort of popping of a speculative bubble that had burst, or is there something more worrying going on here?
Well, it is the popping of a speculative bubble, and there's something more worrying. As you know, over the last year, China's stock markets went up about 150%, but over the last month and a half, they've gone down a little more than 30%. And that would be normal, but the problem is that the government has, in effect, gone nuclear in its response to the downturn. And they were so aggressive because I think they came to believe that government credibility was on the line after the party and the government had talked up the stock market over the past year. Now what I think that we're seeing is the government is recognizing that they overreacted, and so they're beginning a process of pulling back, because in their response they in effect nationalized part of the stock markets. But when they pull back, people then get really worried because they know that government intervention is the only thing that's still keeping the markets at these unrealistic levels.
We've seen, we've had the last 7 or so years to understand how difficult it is to wean yourself off of government intervention of any type. So is there credibility hurt? And will this impact the economy? Because we keep hearing from people like you and experts that there isn't the connection between the fundamentals of the economy and the stock market in the way there might be, say, here in the U.S.
Well, certainly when you hear the numbers that only 10% of the population is invested in the stock market, that the stock market is a relatively smaller part of the economy than certainly it is here in the United States, you can say, well, it's not such a big deal. But the big deal is that, one, government has put its credibility on the line. Two, Xi Jinping, the deal that Xi Jinping has essentially made with the Chinese people is that if he gets power to centralize authority, which he's done, he promised to rationalize the economy and to move towards allocation of resources using market principles. But now, if at a moment of crisis they're forgetting market principles and they're having massive re-centralization, then that puts a dark cloud over the reform program as a whole. And I think that the Chinese government has begun to realize this, and that's why they're beginning to step away from such massive and, in my opinion, mistaken intervention in the market.
And so does this put a chill on any other further liberalization? This was always going to be the tough part of the transition, wasn't it, Jamie? That in order to have a market economy, there's going to be pain, there's going to be bankruptcy, there are going to be things that people don't like and may cause social pushback, if not unrest.
Yeah, well, and that is the crux of what is happening here, is that there are these issues, and at the end of the day, as I've said on this program many times, and have discussed with you, Maggie, many times, that the core problem in China is a political problem. In China, every resource is misallocated, beginning with, and as a result of the misallocation of political power. And so there is this push, because if China, on one hand, moves towards a market economy, it means the party is going to have to let go of some of its controls. But every time where there's a question of who benefits, whether it's the party and the state-owned enterprises, or the more regular people, whether it's retail investors or the people who run small and medium enterprises, at the end of the day, the party circles the wagons around its own. And that, as long as that happens, I foresee many more problems in the Chinese economy going forward.
This is not an easy or simple transition they're trying to make, that's for sure. Jamie Metzl, always appreciate you coming on and helping us understand it a little better.
My pleasure,
Great to see you.